You know, years ago when I was campus minister at an all-boy high school, Cathedral Prep in Erie, PA for 8 years. I was also campus minister at Penn State Barron in Erie for 7 years. I did both at the same time. And while I was there was one night I used to have mass every Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And I'd hear confessions afterwards. And I hear confessions for hours, typical college kids. Anyway, the kids are coming and they're saying, Father, we're getting killed outside. I go, what's the matter? And there was a group of homosexual group out there, it's called Trigon. You know, homosexual, bisexual, trisexual, whatever you try, go for it, whatever it is. And so they sat there and they were killing our kids because they had a camera and they were interviewing our kids. And they were crucifying, dying, and burying my kids. And I said, wait till I get outside. So, and you might sit there and think, oh, but how he did this. The guy comes out. He takes a microphone. Can we interview you, Father? Certainly. Father, do you believe homosexuals can go to heaven? Well, sure. Huh? Do you believe it's a sin? Why, sure. Just like sex before marriage is a sin. Just like abortion's a sin. Just like committing adultery is a sin. Just like missing mass on Sundays is a sin. Just like getting drunk is a sin. It's a sin, yeah. Oh, and then he didn't know what to say. And then I go, you know what? I've had 3 friends have died of AIDS. And you know what their problem was? They just wanted to be loved. And they tried to fill the emptiness with all this stuff. And nothing filled the emptiness. And the guy sat there, told him, take off the camera, turn off the camera. And this guy started to cry. And he says, help me, Father. Of course, I'll help him. If I'd have sat there and said, you're all going to hell, what the hell do you think you are? It's a sin, it's disgusting! That person would go to hell because of me. Because instead of loving him, I judged him. When Jesus was dealing with people who were sinners, the law of God, God's law says, if you commit adultery, you must be stoned. That's what God's law says. Correct? A woman was caught in adultery, in the midst of the act. That means she's still naked. They drag her through the streets naked. They throw her before Jesus Christ. And they said, Jesus, the law says that she must be put to death. What do you say? And he starts writing on the ground. We don't know what he wrote. Most people believe he wrote the commandments. Look at them all. And then he got up and he says, you who are without sin, you cast the first stone. And every single person left. And then when he's confronted with the woman, what does he say? Does anyone condemn you? No one, sir. Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. It was his love that changed her. If you want people to change, like your kids aren't living your way, and you sit there and say, in my house, you'll do it this way, you little miserable, and they don't talk to dad for the rest of their lives because dad's a miserable son of a so-and-so. Because he judged me. Sorry. He judged me instead of loving me. The thing that'll set people free is your love, not your judgment. And again, if we love people, we got to tell the people we love that we love them. You know, and this is something, years ago, again, when I was first ordained, next week I'll be ordained 19 years. I'm getting old. Anyway, when I first was getting ordained, right after I was ordained, there was this one kid who became a kicker for a pit, but I ain't going to go any more than that. And he went on to become a professional football player. It's 19 years ago. He's a big kid. And I used to have a big youth group. And so I'd go out all the time with the kids. And so this one kid, he's sitting there and we're getting ready to go out and see a movie. And I'm typing at the typewriter. Remember typewriters? Yeah, I'm at the typewriter. And this guy was a big talker. And all of a sudden he got real quiet behind me. And I turned around and I says, what? And this big kid was sobbing like a baby. And I can't take tears, especially with men. I'm like, okay, don't stop crying, please stop crying. And I looked at him, I said, so-and-so, what's the matter? I'll never forget what this kid said to me. He said, Father, I'd do anything if my dad just told me once that he loved me. His dad showed it. His dad went to all his games. His dad was always present, but his dad didn't tell him. 5 years ago, his father dies. Now this man's in his 30s. After the funeral, I saw him and I said, so-and-so, did your dad ever tell you that he loved you? And this big man again started to sob. Never, Father. The only thing this kid wanted and this man wanted from his dad was for his dad to tell him that he loved him. So you got to sit there and tell them. That became real to me 4 years ago. Now listen, I grew up on the north side, Spring Hill, St. Andrew's Parish. It's now part of the Holy Wisdom Parish over there, right? And I grew up, both my parents were cops. My father was a cop, a canine cop. We had a white shepherd. And my mother graduated highest ever from the Pittsburgh Police Academy. And as she even got a male watch in those days, because they didn't know a woman had ever done it before. And I always say, my mother missed her vocation. She should have been God because she knows everything. Just ask her. Anyway, so I spent time with her last night. She was a cop out here in Squirrel Hill. Her name was Verbish, but she's the city of Pittsburgh. Sandra Verbish. Some of you might know her. And in dealing with cops my whole life, they always thought I'd be a cop too. And in some ways I am, But the reality is they always thought both parents cops are going to be a cop too, But dealing with cops, and I'm sure there's police officers here, you know that it's a hard life. Every time you get a call, it's for something bad. And so some of the cops become alcoholics, bad alcoholics. And to try to deaden the pain, they drink. And so here it is, this one man I got to know very well, being a good Pittsburgh police officer, but he became a very bad drunk. So he left the Pittsburgh police force, he went out to Las Vegas because we all know everybody's happy in Las Vegas, Got a new wife, new kids, but still kept drinking and drinking. So after a few years in Las Vegas, took his new wife, new kids, and he moved to Houston, Texas, because we know everybody's happy in Houston, Texas. But he kept drinking and drinking and drinking. And this man, at 45 years of age, that's quite young, isn't it? I just turned 48. He was a baby. And this 45-year-old man, he's dying of cirrhosis of the liver. I was a senior in college at that time in a seminary. And his wife at the time called me on the phone and said, Larry, he's dying. Do you think you'd come be with him? And I said, of course, I'm a seminarian. That's what we do. And I got into a plane and I flew out to Houston, Texas. When I walked in this room, I was not prepared for what I saw. Here was this man, 45 years old, pure white hair. He looked like he was 90. He was ancient looking. He had no fat in his body. He looked like he was dying of AIDS. And I walked into the room and I said, you look like hell, My negative humor. If you haven't been able to figure it out yet, I have a negative humor. It's a Pittsburgh trait. Anyway, so as they're sitting there, but he couldn't talk to me because he had a respirator on. He had to write to me on a little blackboard. And there I am spending time with this man. I spent a week with him, and it was my last time with him. And I'm praying with him and spending time with him. And as he's laying there, I said, listen, I got to go. But I'm going to be graduating, this was September. I'm going to be graduating in May, It'd be great if you could be there. And he shook his head up and down. We both knew this wasn't going to happen. This man was going to die. And I said, okay, listen, I got to go, but I'll pray for you. And he shook his head up and down. I start walking out of the room. Doesn't it sound holy? I'll pray for you. Oh my, so holy. As I'm walking out, I thought, this will be the last time I ever look at this man. And so I turn around, and here's this man desperately calling me back with his arms like this. And he couldn't say anything, so I'm glad I turned around. So I ran around the other side of the bed, and I said, what's the matter? What can I do for you? And this cop took me. He grabbed me, and he pulled me so close to himself, and he's holding me so tight. I can feel it if it was 2 seconds ago. And as he's holding me so tight, I said, yeah, I love you too, Dad. And a little later, my father died. The only time I ever told my father that I loved him was on his deathbed. Why? Because he wasn't the type of dad I wanted. My dad swore he'd never be like his dad, but my dad's father was a street bum in downtown Pittsburgh. We wouldn't know where my grandfather was for months at a time. We'd be driving around and we'd look over and there's Granddad. Come on, let's go get him. And we'd have to pick him up and put him in the car. And my dad swore he'd never be like his father. And my dad died of the same thing, even younger, at 45 years old. I'm sorry, he was 2 days from his 46th birthday when he died. And I went through my whole life judging my father instead of loving my father. We Catholics are great judgers, but we're not so great lovers. How about you? Do you tell the people you love that you love them? Do you sit there and look at your wife and tell your wife that you love her every day? Do you tell your kids that you love them every day? If not, I want to give you some homework. And you better do the homework or you're going to hell. So, first thing I want you to do is before you go to bed tonight is you got to write to every one of your children and you got to tell them that you love them. If you have 10 kids, it's going to be a long night. And you can't write 1 and Xerox it. That's sickening. And instead of telling your kids why, and let me give you a hint. Some of you haven't talked to your father or your kid or your kids or whatever for a long time. Get over yourself. Let me give you this, and I'm not saying that. A lot of things I say for effect. I am not saying this for effect. You must forgive everyone in your life or be damned. That's the truth. Jesus said, unless you forgive, you will not be forgiven. Every time you say the Our Father, you say, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive. And then in case you didn't get it, right after Jesus says, if you forgive others their sins, you will be forgiven. If you do not forgive others, then what does it say? Neither will your Father forgive you. You must. So it's time. So I want you to write your kids letters and tell them that you love them. I want you to write your wives letters and tell them you love them. If your parents are still alive, then it's time to write your parents a letter. I know, don't give me a 5-minute thing. I will strangle you. I know exactly how much time I have left. So, he held up a 5-minute sign. Guys, I'll kill you. Anyway, I have it exactly. The reality is, you got to tell them. And so you write them this letter. Then after you write this, make it a commitment today for the rest of your life that you'll tell the people you love that you love them. For some of you, this is going to kill you. Good. It's about time you die for love. It's about time. And gentlemen, if you look at me and say, how are you, Father? I'm not doing that. Well, then you are a wimp. And when you look in the mirror, you better not even look in the mirror. You better look between your legs because there's nothing there. If you can't tell your wife and your kids that you love them, you're not a man. It's that simple.